Yes, today we're going to talk about sensory because, like I said, it's my favorite thing in the world to talk about. That's kind of sad. Anyways, like I said before, sensory integration is how our brain makes sense of the world around us. So our body, our brain, and our body take in that sensory information. It's processed within our brain, and then we have our body produces an outcome, or what we call an adaptive response. That's what we call it in sensory integration world. But if you've been in my course, or if you've watched Sensory Basics in my member vault, you'll know that I talk about this big cup or little cup. So you can have a big cup or a little cup for sensory input. And this is the easiest way that I've seen for explaining sensory processing and sensory sensitivities. So I've got this cup. If I put it up here, it's a big cup. So if I have a big cup for sensory, and each of our senses can have different size cups, by the way. So if you have a big cup for sensory, it means that you need a lot of input to fill your cup. Okay? It's like the tired mom needs the big cup of coffee because she's really tired and she needs more input. So if you have a big cup for sensory input, you need more input to fill that cup. But if you have a little cup for sensory input, it doesn't take very much sensory input before that cup is overflowing. You with me? So if you have the big cup, you're the sensory seeker. You're seeking out. You're moving all the time, trying to fill that cup with movement. You're touching everything because you need more input. You need more touch input to know what objects are, to find out information about how things feel. If you have a big cup for sound, you're going to be making lots of sounds and you're going to be loud. If you have a big cup for proprioception, you might not know that sense. That's your sense, your push-pull sense that gives us information about your body awareness. But kids who are pushing things and walking really heavy, they probably have a big cup for proprioception. Kids who like rock climbing and going on high risky activities and like climbing things and doing big movement things, risky activities, spinning, those kids have a big cup for vestibular input, for movement. And actually, like gymnasts and dancers have big cups for vestibular because they can do these moves and not get dizzy. You have a small cup for any of those senses. It doesn't take very much until that cup is overflowing. And so if you have a small cup for sounds, you might not like the sound of the toilet. And that's going to make going to the bathroom and toilet training and doing those self-care activities really challenging. You might not like being in crowded spaces because it's too loud. If you have a small cup for touch, it can interfere with things like washing your face, having a shower, getting a haircut. I hear that a lot from parents, that their kids don't like to get their hair cut. They're sensitive. And so we work on this, desensitizing. I have a client right now that I'm working on desensitizing so that he can tolerate having electrodes from an EKG put on him so that he can go to the doctor for a test. So we look at how these interfere with our day-to-day activities, and if you're sensitive to sensory input. If you have a small cup for sensory input, it tends to be more visible. We see more behaviors because this sends kids into that fight or flight response where that sensory input, we talk about the fuzzies in the sock for those kids who don't like the way their clothes feel. Those fuzzies in their sock feel like pain. They hurt. They send them into a fight or flight response, which is this heightened level of arousal, and that's distress for them. So yeah, big cup, little cup. So we can have, like I said, there are not just 5 senses. I didn't say this. We talk about our 7 senses, our 8 senses sometimes. So we've got our sense of smell, touch, sound, taste. 2 movement senses, I'm missing one. Anyways, we have our 2 movement senses, which I talked a little bit about, our vestibular sense and our proprioceptive sense. And all of those senses need to get integrated. There's another sense that is our interoception. It's our internal sense, which we don't talk a lot about, but it's like who we are and how we feel and our feelings, our deep emotions. So these all play a role in our behaviors, because if that sensory information isn't being processed right, if our brain is telling us that that sound is like bad and we need to go into fight or flight, then that's what we do when we don't need to. If our brain gets the message mixed up and it tells us that the fuzzies in our socks are dangerous, then we don't misbehave. We just react differently. And I want to teach kids and help families understand the behaviors so that they can help their kids, so that they can participate in all these daily activities. I hope that makes sense. Yesterday, I talked about the window of tolerance on my Instagram feed. And so check that out. I also talk a lot about this, the roots. Feed the roots, not the branches. And so if you look for that, feed the roots is our senses are the roots. And so if we feed those sensory roots, then the rest of the tree can flourish. And our behavior and all of our daily activities are the leaves and the branches of this tree. So we need to focus on feeding those roots so that we see good behavior, so that we are coordinated, so that we can tolerate our daily activities, tolerate getting dressed and having our hair cut, and we can sit still and we can learn and behave and feel good about ourselves. So that's why we talk about sensory. So recap. I talked about what sensory integration is. I talked about how you can have a big cup or a little cup. We talk about feeding the roots, not the branches. Other people talk about this as a pyramid. And so at the base of our pyramid is our sensory systems. And then as those senses get integrated, it leads to the top of the pyramid, which is our behavior, our learning, and our daily activities. And so in between there, we need our motor skills and motor planning and perceptions to be working just right so that we can do all those higher functioning things. But do you think that this approach could work with your kids' behaviors? I know that I have someone on here who could attest to how it worked, because they were in the class that I ran in July, and just sent me a testimonial today saying that this totally helped. That, one of the things that I heard back in June and July was that nobody teaches parents how to understand their kids' behaviors. When I work in schools, or before I was working in the schools, and I'm always teaching the teacher and the teacher assistant how to manage these behaviors and what to do, but I wasn't working with the parents. And now I think COVID really helped me realize that I need to help the parents more. I need to teach the parents because I am a parent, and I want to share this information with all of you because I want to make your life easier. I don't want you to have to deal with behaviors day in and day out. I want to help you connect with your kids and have joy in your life, not screaming matches and fights and power struggles and